Okay. Good morning, colleagues. As you are joining, we are about to start. We are just waiting for a few of our principals just to join us, and once they are all in, and then we would be starting in a few minutes. It's fine.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us. We will be shortly. Please keep your microphones muted while we read for others today. But before officially meeting, let to invite all participants to introduce themselves using the chat box. Just type your name and your surname. Also, if you are institution, it's very important that you know where you come from. This will, of course, will help us to know who's participating.
Okay, colleagues, yes, just like that. There's someone with the mic open. Kindly switch off your mic. As Ndadimatu was saying, colleagues, for registration, please go to the chat icon on your far left. Press it, and then it will give you a drop down, and then in that chat box, please write your name and your surname and the institution that you come from, that you represent. Perhaps some of us are joining as individuals. It's quite accepted that to have your name and surname only. So continue doing that as we are about to start. So we are not going to have a round robin of introductions, please. Thank you. Those of our colleagues who are still joining us, we have just made a note that kindly go to the chat box, introduce yourself there in the chat box, the name, the surname, which institution you represent, or you come as an individual. It's also welcome. That's part of our introductions, because after that, we'll just be going straight to the start of our webinar session. Thank you. Those of our colleagues who are still joining us, the instruction is such that please go to the chat box icon on your far left, press it, and then it will give you a drop down, type in your name and surname and the institution that you come from. That's part of our registration. Thank you. We are just waiting for our principals just to join us. I have seen that our CEO, Medimpo, has joined. And we are just waiting for the Principal Secretary, Minister of Gender, Youth and Social Development, just to join us. And once she is in, then we will kickstart our webinar session. Please, Mayor Director Agenda, please, you can signal to me if he has already joined or she has already joined, perhaps using a similar gadget so we cannot see his name on our end. I can see that colleagues who are joining us are registering. Thank you very much. For those who are still joining us, the instruction is that on our chat box, please press the far left icon, and then it will give you a drop down. Kindly type in your name and the surname and where you come from. That's part of our introductions. We will be beginning shortly. We are just trying to find whether the principal secretary has already joined us, and if such, then we would be beginning shortly. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, I've just been reliably notified that the principal secretary is just trying to join. So shortly, then we'll begin. Thank you for your patience.
So, Sarah, do you have money?
Esteemed participants, good morning once again. For those of you who have just joined us, the instruction has been that please on the chat box introduce yourself. Please type in your name and the surname and the institution or the CSO that you come from, so that we keep that participant records for today. The principal secretary is trying to join because his meeting just overran with a few minutes. Because we are using the aviation principles when it comes to time today, I think Mayor CEO, if you give me the indication, then would be good to start. Once the PS has joined us, then we would give him space to give his opening remarks. If you allow me, may we start then with our introductions as the facilitators for you for today.
Yes, once again, good morning, colleagues, and everyone, welcome to everyone joining us for this webinar on strengthening GBV coordination and gender mainstreaming in SWOT. We are very pleased to have you with us this morning. My name is Intega Madumo, the Senior Gender Officer in the Department of Gender, Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development. I will be co-facilitating today's session together with Dr. Ramakwile. Dr. Ramakwile, perhaps you can briefly introduce yourself.
Okay. Thanks, Ndate, and good morning once again, esteemed guest. We are very pleased to lead today's conversation. It's really an honor in this time where we seriously need a coordinated approach and response to gender-based violence and gender equality in totality. My name is Musiwa Ramakwile. I work for Sustainable Irrigated Horticulture, Health and Business Development Program, Project Implementing Unit as the GBV GSI Manager. So today I will be co-facilitating or leading this session with Ndate Madu. So first of all, I think a few housekeepings. I would just project our outline for today so that we have a sense and appreciation of the flow of today. How is it going to be like? So I'll just quickly take you through the session outline. We have requested that as of when we are joining, we go to the chat box and then introduce ourselves. I think that session we have already done it. So this is our outline. We are going to have the welcome remarks by CEO for the Horticulture, Health and Business Development Project Implementing Unit. And thereafter, we would have opening remarks by the Principal Secretary, Minister of Gender, Youth and Social Development. But if he is still tied on his meeting, then we would skip that item and then we would revisit it when he has joined us. So thereafter, we would be having 3 speakers for today. Tanya Wells-Brown, she would be leading us on the topic from silos to synergy, transforming GBV response through coordination. And then we would be followed by Mary Harper-Sissingi from Lanford, who will be presenting to us on creating spaces for all gender mainstreaming and disability inclusion, giving us the picture of where we are and where we should be going as Lesotho when it comes to gender mainstreaming and disability inclusion. Thereafter, we would have the last but not least, Mema Murao, who would be giving us a picture of how changing minds, changing lives through SPC solutions for GBV prevention can be framed beyond the normal way that we do very much often follow of policy and legal frameworks when trying to address a GBV response. So that is our outlook for today, and then we would have obviously Q&A session, and then we'll be having the closing remarks by Director Gender and Social Inclusion, Mamuna Majama. Thank you very much, colleagues. That is the outlook of how we are going to proceed for today. Few housekeeping rules, I think, that I should outline before I give Mayor CEO to give us welcome remarks. I have just noticed that Ndate PS has just joined us, so our agenda item flow would just be as smooth as it has been anticipated. Thank you very much, Ndate Mahele. We have taken note of you joining us. I was just going to go through a few housekeeping rules. We do have Mayor Malesawana Mohale in our midst, who's going to be our sign language interpreter. We kind of like didn't manage to have 2, so it's just going to be very difficult for her for this 2 hours to just keep on interpreting, while she's not going to have any break. But we do apologize, and then we only hope that her energies would be sufficient throughout the 2 hours. The health break, we are not going to have a health break since this is just a short 2-hour meeting or a conversation. So if individually one feels like there's a call for nature, please respond to it and quickly rejoin us. So kindly, esteemed guests and participants, please keep your microphones off and the cameras as well, because we are experiencing different bandwidths. So for smooth reception, please keep your cameras and microphones off at all times. We do have question and answer session at the end, but you are very much allowed to use the chat box just to put in whatever comments that you may have. They would be responded to accordingly by our speakers for today. Your participation, honestly, colleagues, it's highly valued, and please do as such freely. At the end of the 3 presentations, there would be a Q&A session. For purposes of lessons learned and everything, we would be recording this session. And as I'm saying that, it's a humble request for your consent for us to record the session. Time management, I think this goes to our speakers. Please, I've already indicated that we are using an aviation principles today. So please try to stick to your 20 minutes allocated time so that we kindly release our participants to engage in other elements that they are there in their schedule for today. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us. We look forward to an engaging and productive session for today. Just a reminder for those colleagues who are still joining us, please go to the chat box, do the introductions. That's how we are going to do the introductions. We are not going to have a round robin introductions. At this juncture, I think Medimpo is ready to give her welcome remarks. And Medimpo, please go ahead and unmute and give us the opening remarks. Thank you very much, Medimpo. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ndate Ramakwele and Ndate Matubo, our facilitators. Good morning, Bomme Lebondate, our distinguished participants, and our partners in the Ministry of Gender and Youth and Social Development. In particular, I recognize Ndate PS, Ndate Machele, and to our distinguished speakers as well. Ke kopa ke tle ke time camera ya ka for connection ke bona e fluctuate so that it does not interfere. Bomme le bontate, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this inaugural webinar on strengthening GBV coordination and gender mainstreaming in Lesotho. We are particularly excited as the PIU because this comes after a short hiatus, and we are delighted to be part of this journey as we resume these important conversations and to continue to work collectively to strengthen our response to GBV and advance gender equality. And as indicated earlier, the webinar is hosted in partnership with the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development, and we are very grateful for your partnership. And the whole idea behind this webinar is to promote learning, experience sharing, and to maintain momentum on the dialogue on GBV. As Dr. Ramakole did say, there is a lot happening in the space, and we need to be coordinating and collaborating and speaking to each other at all times. And our program, as you know, has a very strong gender and social inclusion and commitment. And that is why we are still very committed to being part of the key actors in addressing and mitigating GBV risks in Lesotho. And GBV really remains a serious human rights public health and economic concern despite existing measures, legal and policy, as well as investment that have been made over the years to curb the scourge of GBV. And through this webinar, we have an opportunity to strengthen our interventions by promoting a more survivor-centered approach that places survivor rights, dignity, safety, and choice at the heart of our responses. And it is very important, I believe, at this time that we move beyond just protection alone. The justice system does its work, but we also need to be more intentional about creating opportunities for survivors to exercise greater agency, participate in decision-making, and become active agents in their own recovery, transformation for lasting change. And this we can only achieve when we work and coordinate effectively, and to make sure that whatever we are doing, our multi-sectoral responses take a gender transformative approach that can deliver the lasting change. And as you've heard earlier, that even more focus has to be on behavioral change that will lead to lasting impact. And to help us unpack and have more insight, we have our distinguished speakers, Mayor Tanya Wells-Brown from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Thank you very much, Tanya, for continuing to be a partner with the country and with the program specifically. We really appreciate your continuing support. Also to appreciate Mayor SIHHBDP-PIU from Lanford. Mayor, thank you so much for being part of the panel, and to Mema Marau as well for preparing some interesting insight in terms of what more can be done in terms of strengthening that survivor-centric approach. And Bondata Makwele as well, who will be guiding us through the discussions so that we have a very productive, engaging webinar and for meaningful experience and knowledge exchange. And also to Mayor Malisawana, thank you so much, Mayor, for the service. It is very thoughtful. Hangata platforms don't always think further in terms of how inclusive we can be. We appreciate your service, and to our comms and IT teams that have put together the webinar and are here to support us to make sure that it goes smoothly. And with that, I would really like to appreciate everyone who is here and wish us a fruitful engagement. Thank you very much, Ndat.
Thank you very much, CEO, for those warm welcome remarks. I think generally she was highlighting to us the famous Sesotho adage that we are all required to put hands on deck for us to address meaningfully GBV scourge in our country. At this moment, I would give Ndadima Dubu just to let Ndadi Pierce to give us his opening remarks. Thank you.
Secretary of the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development. To officially open today's webinar, that day, DPS, you managed to join us at the right time while we were still at the early stage of the meeting. The DPS, you have the floor.
Yeah, Chariwa, colleagues, good morning and good day. Allow me to say the salutations. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, DPS. You are loud and clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Allow me to pass my regards to His Majesty King Letsie III, the Honorable the Prime Minister, Ndati Samuel Ntsukwane Matekane, the Honorable the President of the Senate, the Honorable the Speaker of the National Assembly, the honorable the honorable members of the cabinet, in particular the Minister of Gender, Youth and Social Development, can you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, Ndade, apologies for that. Colleagues, please keep your
from the district.
Colleagues, please keep your mics off so that it doesn't disrupt the flow of our session. Thank you very much. Apologies profusely that ADPS for that. Please go ahead and that.
Yeah, the representative of our development partners present here, allow me to couple also the speakers who will be participating in this fora. They are very much welcome, and I pass due respect. Government officials present here, colleagues whom we work with, we have organized these proceedings and this fora. Due respect, colleagues. The civil society organization present, media houses. On that note, allow me to say that all protocol observed. In case of I may have missed some of our participants here. Allow me to say good morning and good day once more. Our facilitators, our speakers, you are very much welcome. It is indeed an honor and privilege to open this important GBV coordination and gender mainstreaming webinar. On behalf of the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development, I am really grateful for your presence and continued commitment to ending gender-based violence and advancing gender equity and equality. This webinar comes at an opportune time because not so long ago, some of you were gathered at the National Coordination Mechanism Conference as different forums, and you made recommendations. Please allow me to mention just one, where you said you need capacity building, or capacity building stood firm as one of those recommendations that we can try forth to improve the knowledge of our people and thereof improve the space and the ecosystem for GBV not to survive. Hence, the intentions of today's conversation will focus on coordinated, gender-responsive, multi-sectoral approach to development, including prevention and response to GBV in Lesotho. Distinguished participants, gender-based violence remains as one of the most pressing human rights and public health challenges that no single institution can address it alone. Hence, I want to highlight and appreciate the wisdom of the composition of this fora to say in our common language, you can't go far if you go alone. You still need to go with somebody else. This is the reason why platforms like this, meant for coordination, learning, and joint actions, are so critical. This webinar is an opportunity to mention just a few of the things that I feel they are critical for us to do. Enhance collaboration among GBV actors, including government ministries, NGOs, development partners, private sector, CSOs, clarify roles and responsibility within the GBV coordination mechanism, improve information sharing and joint planning and implementation. Clarify what GBV mainstreaming means across different sectors, health, agric, natural resources, and other spheres. It was well said by the previous speaker that this is the biggest enemy to the social, economic, and political spaces. Indeed, GBV is a serious threat. It stops others from untapping the God-gifted potential or even the prepared professionalism and skills that we have prepared our lives ever since we were born through schooling and learning. It's been stopped. That can be stopped by GBV. Today, one of the expectations is to come up with the reinforcement of the we have to reinforce the importance of integrating GBV and GSI consideration into all program cycles and programs. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the collaboration and contributions from all stakeholders, in particular from line ministries, civil society organization, traditional and religious leaders, or even the leaders in all spheres, development partners, academia, and the media. I can assure you that your expertise and dedication make this journey possible. Uprooting the effects of GBV requires a coordinated action, coordinated thoughts, coordinated funding, coordinated efforts in order to make sure that we uproot it and make a better environment. If you leave women out, when you know that women are the centrality of the birth of our people, the centrality and the fiber of our culture, we are leaving or causing harm to the most important people for our country, and we cannot achieve any of the desired outcomes that we may wish, plan, and put efforts to achieve. That will not make any fruits. This
DPS. I think we are experiencing connectivity issues.
And make appropriate MC.
Yes, I think we were experiencing a bit of a glitch there, but kindly proceed. It's like the reconnection, it's back again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I was concluding my remarks by saying this webinar provides the space where we coordinate, learn, and strengthen our collective response. And we appreciate sustainable irrigation, horticulture, health, business development program for organizing it for us. We thank you so much. I therefore take this opportunity to urge all of us to participate freely but rigorously. Share as much as possible and leave this space. Take this opportunity that when you leave this space, you have concrete actions that we can take forth and make a difference in our effort to fight GBV, in our effort to improve the ecosystem for women, to make women take their place in our culture. Women are quite an important part that we bring to different families through paying or urging them to come, paying through the kettles, which was the most important commodity that we could share to show our appreciation. Allow me, Ndade Speaker, to say I have this opportunity, I take this opportunity to declare the webinar officially opened.
Oh, thank you, Honorable DPS, for your inspiring opening remarks and for setting the context for today's discussions. Just to summarize some of what the DPS have said, he mentioned the importance of gender equity and issues of the necessity of capacitation. The issue of well-organized coordination, as he emphasized all the surrounding aspects which can help to prevent and respond to GBV. While we cannot neglect Ubuntu or humanity, GBV is a serious threat. It's us who can uproot it. We acknowledge the collaboration of every stakeholder in fighting GBV. Yes, thank you very much. Now, I will give my co-facilitator, Dr. Ramakole, to introduce the speaker.
Thank you very much, Ndadimato, and to you as well, the DPS. We are really honored for that impactful opening remarks. They go a long way, and your participation is a demonstration of a commitment from our supervisors. Thank you very much. For those of us who are not quite clear with the vernac, is that the luggage would take shape as and of when we are going. We have Memal Sawana, who is our sign language interpreter. We had a technical glitch, but thankfully to our IT, we managed to overcome that. So going forward from now, she would be doing that interpretation so that we become inclusive as much as possible. Thank you. We are about to enter the crux of our session today. I would introduce to you Tanya Wells Brown, who is a registered social worker in the United Kingdom, a tutor at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Her work has focused on strengthening health and social sector response to violence against women and children, building safeguarding systems, has also focused on disability inclusion, maternal and child health, and extensively on adolescent sexual and reproductive health across countries such as Mozambique, Timor-Leste, South Africa, and our very own Mountain Kingdom. So she would be here as well physically in the next coming months. So those of you who might have to have coffee with her, they would be more than welcome. She is currently pursuing a PhD with London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, where she is exploring the health sector collaboration in multi-sectoral response to GBV in Lesotho. So her PhD thesis is focusing here on Lesotho, so which is going to be a handy document after its completion. So we are looking forward to that. So Tanya in this session is going to present on from silos to synergies, transforming GBV response through coordination, which basically ties with her current research. So you would appreciate that she would be sharing with us some of her research findings when it comes to GBV coordination and response in Lesotho, giving us a zone on health as well. So please, Tanya, take the floor and open your mic, and you will have 20 minutes just to take us through this, colleagues. All the presentations would be shared to you by Ndadimato, so please just pay attention to what is being delivered. Everything would be shared with you. So those of colleagues who are still joining us, please go to the chat icon and then introduce yourselves there. Tanya, please go ahead, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. It really is a great honor and pleasure to have been invited to speak today. I'd like to extend my respects to all participants here and to the Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Gender and to Medimpo. And I really resonated with both of the opening marks today. I'm going to share screen. I may have low bandwidth as well. So if I have to come off camera in order to deliver the presentation, that might be the case, but I will try and stay on as I deliver. So bear with me a couple of seconds whilst I pop up. Okay.
Okay, it's busy
Okay.
from our end, Tanya. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Side move. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the timer on now and acknowledge the time of 20 minutes. For those of you who are on the presentation, can you put yourself on mute whilst I deliver the presentation? Thank you. Okay, so I have already been introduced. I am a registered social worker in the UK. I'm also, as Ndeti said, I'm pursuing my PhD at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And what I research is collaboration and complexity. So I look at the introduction of complex protocols within a system and how that impacts on those that will be delivering those services. So for example, in Mozambique, I researched the integration of a gender-based violence screening tool and a postpartum depression screening tool in routine postpartum sessions. And I went through an acceptability framework to understand the impact on workers. So I'm always thinking of the health workers and what the introduction of these things actually means from an acceptability perspective or a burden perspective. And this work has translated into my study of collaboration in Lesotho. For this session, what we're going to walk through is we're going to look at and introduce silos, the problems of silos, and why fragmentation leads to poor outcomes in any GBV response, not just in the context of Lesotho. I'm going to talk a little bit about my research. I'm still in the analysis stage, but I'm going to talk about some of the early findings that are coming through from the research that I undertook in January of this year. We're going to look at some good examples of where coordination is already working in the context of Lesotho. And then I'm going to propose or introduce a sort of shared global architecture that has worked in other countries. And then we will look at what needs to happen from those silos that we're currently operating in into a more synergistic approach. What do we mean by silos? We mean separate services. We mean systems and structures that respond to the same thing, to the same case, but without communicating with each other or sharing data or making decisions jointly together. This means that if we're talking about the many services that need to happen in order for the best outcome for a survivor, which may be health services, it could be justice or policing, it could be social services, housing, financial services, or community. When these operate in silos, and there is no sort of shared referral, a person will go from one place to the other, and there's no synergy in what's actually happening. Medimpo refer, yes?
Apologies, please put on the presentation mode for visual clarity.
I'm scared it's going to get stuck, but I will try.
Okay then. Yes.
Okay, is that better? Okay, I've had problems before when it gets stuck, but let's see and hope that it works. So Medimpo referred to more agency in survivors, and this is exactly what happens. Survivors of violence lose their agency if systems are not joined together. They can't make decisions about what they actually want to happen from either a legal perspective or a health perspective, leaving a dangerous situation, they cannot have the agency over themselves. So the referral pathways are all separate, and we don't have what's called a trauma-informed response. The services put themselves in the state where they actually can cause further trauma to a survivor of violence, which is what we don't want to happen. So what I want to demonstrate here is that these siloed effects are not the best outcomes or providing the best outcome for survivors of violence. When we look at it from the perspective of Lesotho, what we have is a demonstrated commitment to prevention, protection, and response through a really strong policy and legislative framework. We've got numerous acts. I'm not going to read them out. You can see them, and you're all of you here today on this webinar will be very aware of the legislation that informs gender-based violence and sexual violence. In 2022, we had the introduction of the Counter Domestic Violence Act, and this has been ratified. What we're seeing happening is a fragmentation, or this legislation that doesn't actually fit together. Now, I don't come at this from a legal perspective. My background is in health. But what I do know is when these legislations don't talk to each other, judges aren't able to actually provide the best outcome from a legislative perspective for a survivor of violence, and systems break down. They often use the legislation that they're most familiar with, that's been perhaps tried and tested, which is not something that perhaps we're trying to do with the new legislation in 2022. So there needs to be alignment and harmonization of these legislative processes. The fact that you have a Counter Domestic Violence Act is good. The functions are set out very clearly. The Act defines what each sector is responsible for. When we talk about multi-sectoral collaboration, there are sectoral roles there. What it doesn't speak to is the coordination. It doesn't provide guidance on how any of these sectors work together. These mandates are siloed, and they don't specify how they connect to each other. So the fact that you have this act is great. You can use this, and you can actually with alignment processes, you can revisit this, and as well as looking at how this legislation aligns with others, you have the opportunity to look at this multi-sectoral approach and refine that so that you have guidance on how these different sectors work together. The Principal Secretary also mentioned funding. Absolutely critical, and it's not uncommon for funding that follows a sectoral approach and doesn't follow survivors. So there's often in many countries no dedicated funding for gender-based violence. It's not allocated with the national budget, and so there's no inability to scale, there's no continuity, and there's no ability to have this sort of as a sustainable element in funding. What we see in many countries is that donor funding dominates, and when donor funding ends, there is no dedicated funding for gender-based violence. The funds are not pooled together. That means that there's no shared GBV basket. Each ministry has to raise and spend its own funding against different mandates. That makes it really difficult to actually work together. And then there's actually no allowance for case time. So one of the things that I have found in my research is when health workers in particular tell me about the additional burden of effort that it takes, the time it takes to document and walk somebody through a trauma-informed approach. Health workers don't get additional money for this. It's something that adds on to their daily burden. And so none of these things are actually factored in. Ministries budget separately for a problem that by definition is multi-sectorable, and coordination is part of that response that no single budget owns. And so if that part doesn't get done, we're actually, further creating these silos. My research was very much from a health sector perspective, and I looked at how the health sector in Lesotho engages with non-health actors to contribute to a multi-sectoral survivor-centered gender-based violence response in Lesotho. I used a predefined framework, which is the collective impact model, which looks at coordination and collaboration together. And I'll walk you through the elements of that later on in the presentation. And I also felt it was really important to understand the power dynamics and gender elements that contribute or deconstruct coordination together. So I overlaid these frameworks together. I've done a document review, and I've looked at anything that looks at coordination from 2020 to 2025. I've participated in and observed coordination meetings in Lesotho, and I conducted semi-structured interviews across a range of sectors, not just the health sector in Lesotho, in January of this year. My research received ethical approval from the London School of Hygiene, but also the Ministry of Health in Lesotho. And I was and had the pleasure of having oversight by Mematatu Kotzano from the Ministry of Health and Ndeti Ramakweli, who is on the webinar today. I looked at research in 4 districts. You're all very familiar with the data in Lesotho. I looked at Mazuru as a national hub, and Butbuti, Loribi, and Mahalisok. That's where I did my research. I'm going to ask you to just look at one thing here now. The prevalence of physical violence versus sexual violence. And I just want you to hold that thought at the moment. I conducted over 22 key informant interviews across a range of sectors in my field visit in January of this year. Here's the sticking that I was referring to. I'm going to skip this slide. You will have this available. These are my participants. I want to give you an idea of how my interviews radiated from each district. I started with a seed respondent, and I interviewed somebody within, in this case, in Butbuti District Hospital, the nursing manager, who informed me that the emergency doctor would be a good informant, who dealt with a lot of GBV cases, and then the nurse midwife. And then I went to 2 referral hospitals who refer into Butbuti District Hospital, and I spoke with the gender officer. So I got a sort of perspective of how the referral pathways worked or didn't work, and how the coordination and communication actually happened. I've just given one example here. In other districts, the police and gender and child protection units were also included as well. And just to go over some of my preliminary findings, what we found was that most sites, the Ministry of Health had done a really good job in training to respond to sexual violence. This was done in around 2021, but very few people had refresher training. GBV knowledge and the ability to respond is concentrated in 1 or 2 individuals within each facility at best. Some of the step-down trainings, which a lot of people referred to, that they received training on site, had been partially useful, but there was still a lot of questions and still a lot of gaps and lack of confidence in how to respond. A lot of the newly appointed doctors and nurses frequently start in their posts without any GBV training at all. And a lot of other sectoral staff were rotated frequently and so hadn't been included in this training. One of the things that really worked with the training was the Ministry of Health, when they did the training, brought in the other sectors that needed to be involved in a multi-sector response. But because of this, people rotating into other sites, there had been a breakdown of those structures. So a common comment was something like, when I'm not around, I'm really worried about who responds to gender-based violence. I'm not sure whether it's done well. There are a lot of protocols on paper, not always in practice. So there was quite a strong understanding of sexual violence, pathways and protocols broadly known, how to respond to medical care, post-exposure prophylaxis, testing for STIs, the knowledge that there needed to be the police referral, the completion of the forms, and psychosocial counselling. The training had been adapted by WHO clinical guidelines, so they've been done extremely well. So that knowledge was really quite high. Where there were breakdowns was documentation was inconsistent. There were duplicate forms, missing serial numbers, incomplete registers, and once a case had been done, people would not really know where things were filed. And when they needed to, for example, if a doctor was called to provide evidence in a case, and this could often be several years later, they were often really struggling to find the case that they had documented at that time. Nobody spoke of protocols for physical violence in any of the districts. It's treated as a domestic issue and a medical issue and not really GBV. And when I asked you to hold that point of the physical prevalence levels versus sexual violence, there's a lot more physical violence that's actually happening that's not treated in the same trauma-informed approach as sexual violence. So even where guidelines exist, a health worker's ability to relate this to any legislation, including the Domestic Violence Acts of 2022, was very limited. And people spoke of this time burden. I don't always complete the papers in the way that I should because it takes so much time. Coordination is held together by WhatsApp groups and goodwill. WhatsApp groups were the most active coordination mechanisms across all 4 districts. They were informal and undocumented. Personal phone calls and relationships were really the most effective way of referring information. Joint case decision making was really rare. Most respondents refer on without follow-up. So once the referrals happened, they're not able to track what actually happens to anybody. A lot of people said, I just do my part alone. So there's this really strong sense of loneliness when dealing with a case. We lose a lot of clients because once they access the health centre, they never come back to us. It's not completely collaborative unless the patient comes back for follow-up. We really don't know what happens, is what people said. I don't think we make joint decisions. I just do my part alone. So these are just some of the comments that I've extracted that look at this sort of loneliness in terms of service delivery. There are big data and accountability gaps. Each sector holds their sort of separate records. So recording is actually quite well done, but then they don't actually come together in any way. There's no closed loop on the case, and they're raised independently at both hospital and the district level. And then also, the health sector will have their documentation and data, and the police will have their own. And if you bear in mind, one of the requirements of the Domestic Violence Act is for quarterly reporting from the police to the Department of Gender for reporting to Parliament. These data points are happening independently of each other, and they don't actually come together to do an analysis of the data that's coming in. GBV is sidelined by sector priorities. It's routinely subsumed within HIV programs and architectures, which was impacted by the reductions of funding by the US government last year. Coordination is tied to donor funding, and so that sort of function has been reduced because that ability to, or funding for coordination is not there. At the same time, what we recognise, or what a strong finding, was that HIV was recognised as a catalyst for working on gender and gender-based violence and gender equality. Gender-based violence and the normalization frequently came across as something that the way that health workers absorbed. Victim blaming attitudes were documented among health workers. So victims were often could often be felt that they were blamed for the circumstances that they were in. Children receive a markedly more protective response than adult women in comparable cases, and violence, as I said, was described as normalized by communities and by health workers themselves. Health workers also don't receive emotional support for the work that they're constantly engaging with. The health sector does have a role. It's widely recognized that it's a ministry of gender who's the driver of gender-based violence. And health is central to this role, but it does operate in silos, and that coordination with the Ministry of Gender is not quite as cohesive as it could be. So GBV continues to be framed as a gender issue rather than whole of government priority. There are examples of where coordination is working. There's some great examples of case coordination in Mahalisok, the gender and child protection units having dedicated spaces now to provide trauma-informed and child-friendly spaces. Laribi spoke about a structured training that they'd introduced and refresher training and transformed one facility's confidence in practice. And we're also seeing a lot of referencing to this sort of one-stop shelter that and the potential for that in Missouri. I want to introduce a shared architecture. Many of you will be familiar with this. It's one that I've worked with and supported implementation in many countries. The Joint UN Essential Services Package for Women and Girls Subject to Violence, a globally agreed upon framework that was introduced in 2015. And there were 10 sort of pilot countries that implemented this, and their various reviews and evaluations that have been done that demonstrate the effectiveness of this collaborative approach. These are the elements of it, a joint sort of guidance on health, justice and policing, social services. So each has their guidance of these sort of minimal services that are to be provided. But there's also these really important elements that were introduced later in the piece on coordination, government, governance, and how to actually do that. So so even the UN and WHO realized that just introducing this guidance still enabled those silo processes. So they really focused on the coordination. So inside the Essential Services Package, there's a backbone connecting every sector across these elements: health, justice and policing, and social services. And given the interest of time, I'm not going to speak too much about this now, but just to make you aware that this coordination element and guidance is there and helps these sectors come together for to align policy, to consider the workforce needs, the additional work that's required of people who are actually conducting these services or providing these services, how terms of references need to be updated in order to be able to do this, and then more broadly about how to align sort of commodities, infrastructure and data collection across this multi-sectoral response. There's some really good examples of how utilization of the Essential Services Package in practice in various countries have really strengthened a sectoral response. For example, in Peru, the co-location under a joint protocol, an emergency women's centre was established inside a health centre. And given a lot of survivors of violence often seek health services first of all, that meant that they could have their services within the centre, and the police and social services and legislative services came to the health centre. So there's different ways and different models that have actually worked, and I would be happy to provide a workshop where we actually unpack some of these services and practices and approaches that have worked in different countries. What good coordination looks like. This is what came out of the findings: a national and local governance structure with clear leadership and a clear mandate, joint referral pathways and shared case management across the sectors, common data and monitoring and evaluation systems, not different ones, and a resource backbone function. One of the quotes that I liked: we should have a coordination structure at the national level that looks at fundraising, referral management, training and data. The framework that I used for my research looked at all of these, and I've done my first layer of analysis using this approach. So where is there a common agenda among all of the different sectors? And in Lesotho, that agenda is verbalized, but it's actually not down on paper. The shared measurement is not in place, so that's shared joint monitoring and evaluation, and mutually reinforcing activities are still done very much in silos. Communication really needs to be much more continuous. Relying on WhatsApp as a form of communication, while maybe pragmatic, is not necessarily the most confidential way. So there needs to be ways that think about how do people involved in a survivor response communicate, and then having this sort of backbone function. Who's taking the lead of this? Who's actually going to coordinate and provide support to all of these responses? What needs to change in Lesotho? Institutionalizing the coordination, using the Ministry of Gender as a resource permanent backbone. Align the legislation. There's some great case studies where legislation has been non-aligned. For example, I worked in Timor-Leste, and there's a wonderful alignment exercise between public crime of domestic violence with the Sexual Offences Act, and bringing all of the actors around the table, not just the Ministry of Justice, who obviously need to look at that from a detailed legislative perspective, but what actually needs to happen from a pragmatic perspective, and all the actors together. Sectoral mandates, so formal sectoral representation in every coordination structure, reinvigorating the National Action Plan. You have one, pick that up again and look at what needs to be updated. It doesn't need to be reinvented. Building a shared data system, linking the health, police and social services and other sectors as required. This funding coordination is crucial through government budgets, not tied to donor cycles that start and stop. And centre power and gender equity. Ensure grassroots women-led organisations are able to influence decisions. They're often the people that provide response as well. So not just that they're tokenistically attending meetings, but they're there at the table with an equitable seat. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation. I realise I went over time. I have my email addresses here. You will receive the presentation. And again, I reiterate, it's my absolute pleasure to attend today and provide early findings of my research, and hope that it supports you as you move forward on your journey.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I knew that you would set the stage very well and the tone very well, as per your surname in Sesotho. We say that means the name carries that code in it. So thanks for setting the stage and the tone for us very well. The esteemed participants, really, Tanya has given what one would say is a mouthful. She departed from areas where she highlighted the legislative conflict that we still have to address, that is in the pipeline, as we are looking to amend the Counter Domestic Violence just to be in alignment with other legislative pieces like Sexual Offences Act. She further mentioned the capacity building, which that APS is really indicated in his welcome remarks. Obviously, she pointed some few challenges that we still have to go over in terms of coordination, the absence of protocols, poor documentation, and honestly looking holistically in terms of this GBV as a violence, not only paying particular interest to sexual violence, as she has mentioned that it appears that physical violence is a bit neglected. I'm just jolting your memory so that when we go to the Q&A sessions, you are still clear on the issues that Tanya covered. When we talk about coordination, honestly, she has mentioned that coordination here is something that it's done on platforms like WhatsApp and on a goodwill response from people who are within the GBV prevention and response. So this has to significantly change. Also, data deficiency. We cannot program accurately in the state or in the status where there's no data. We would be thumb-sucking our interventions. So we need to do something in order to have that objective data. So she went on to talk about essential service package as a conduit or something that would glue our sectors in terms of their responses. So I think that's a mouthful of what she has talked about and how she has also proposed a solution as to an inevitable architecture that we as Lesotho can accommodate in terms of building those shared partnerships and collective responsibilities from the sector level, from health, police, psychosocial support, the justice system. So I think that is what, in totality, what she has shared with us. Thank you very much, Tanya, for setting that. I think we are ready to move on to our second speaker. Colleagues, please note and hold whatever inputs, questions, comments that you have for Tanya's presentation. At the end of the speaker 3, then we'll be having that Q&A session where we would be entertaining and engaging robustly the presentations. Thank you very much, Ndatima. Please go ahead and then introduce our second speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Ramagule. Our second presenter is Ms. Refule Sisini. Just to note, colleagues, Mrs. Sonono was indicated on the flyer. We unfortunately not be joining us today as the presenter. She has been replaced by Mrs. Refule Sisini. We apologize for any inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. I believe many of you may already know Mrs. Refule Happy, given her work and engagement in this area. Nevertheless, for those who may not have had the opportunity to interact with her before, we are pleased to have her with us today. She's an assistant gender and disability rights activist in Lesotho and in the Global South. Currently working as a gender officer at Lemford. She has been instrumental in the development of a number of legal and policy frameworks. Of note, her distinguished participation in the development of the Lesotho National Disability Mainstreaming Plan. Mary Fulabesi advocacy is beyond rhetoric because she is the founder of Inclusive Tech World, which lead the inclusion and independence of people with disabilities in Lesotho. By offering practical and academic training on assistive technologies, she will present on creating spaces for all gender mainstreaming and disability inclusion. Mefifi, I kindly invite you to proceed with your presentation. Please, now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ndate. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Mefifi, please proceed.
Okay, thank you so much, Ndate, and I'll pass my warm greetings to everyone who has attended the webinar. And I would really love to appreciate this opportunity that I have received to come and share the insight on the issue of gender mainstreaming and disability inclusion. And when I saw the topic, I asked myself, like, whose gender are we mainstreaming?
Mayor Refile?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Ndede. So I was saying, when I had the invitation to come and share the insights on the issues of gender mainstreaming, I asked myself, like, whose gender are we mainstreaming? So often when people see the word or hear
I don't know, colleagues, if it's from our end or you are as well not hearing Mayor Refile.
Yo, can you hear me now?
Yes, and I hope the internet will behave for fire to it. So go ahead,
Okay, I don't know that. I think what I'm seeing, the mic is muting itself. I don't know what is happening. I'll try to continue. I'm not sure how far did I go? I should start all the way from the beginning.
Yes,
So,
please.
okay, thank you so much.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I was appreciating the invitation to be presenting and sharing the insights on the issue of gender mainstreaming. And when I got the invitation, I asked myself, like, whose gender are we mainstreaming? Really, like, whose gender are we mainstreaming? And what I realized is that so often when people hear or see the word gender, they often put alongside it women empowerment. And the question remains, can we say gender is only limited to women empowerment, or is gender just women empowerment? So we cannot say that, because when you're talking about gender, we are talking about issues of power relations, how power is distributed in our communities, a socially constructed concept of how men and women relate, boys and girls relate in our societies, the opportunities and responsibilities that they have. Next slide, please. So I would like us, to try to look back why the issue of gender equality is so important to us in this space, not just in Lesotho, but globally. I would like us to take a historical lens. How did we get here? And perhaps this foundation would also help us to understand in the cases of those who maybe when they hear the issues of gender, they're like, oh, these women now they want to have power over men or over everybody else. So historically, looking through the colonial lens, considering that also as Lesotho, we were once colonized. In that era, when the Europeans were scrambling for Africa and other parts of the world, wanting to have power over resources, power over the economy, power over people, they had to find ways, a strategy of how they could have that power. And the first strategy was to socially classify the world's population. And the categories that they used, one of them was classifying people by their skin color, whites being superior and blacks inferior, using also sex, men being superior and women inferior. And this one of sex, it also comes to this, what we are talking about today, issues of gender. which is socially constructed, and people are given the responsibilities within the community. And it says if the world was being classified, saying men will be superior, it says women would be having several challenges within our communities. And unfortunately, that criteria left also part of our members out of the criteria of the population was being considered. Considering our LGBTQI plus community, if the criteria says tick, men, women, what about others? They were not there. That is why these issues of gender inclusion, gender mainstreaming are so important, because everybody has to be included. And it also comes to other essential concepts of inclusion, disability inclusion. Considering that lens, where we look back at when people were trying to have power over the entire world, they wanted people who would work either in mining, in farms, in production. And it says if a member of the society had a disability, they were not considered capable enough to be contributing. And that in that classification, they were not considered. That is why even today, there's still issues of inclusion, and often we'll find our persons with disabilities also left behind. Next slide, please. And I would like to talk more on the issues of women. Why them? Because I know so often for many people will be thinking gender is just about women's empowerment or inclusion of women. So you find that because of this historical background that I tried setting down, is that women, they were classified as being weak. They were considered not capable enough. They were said they were emotionally weak. And they were given the responsibilities of nurturing, of taking care of the homes, and that disadvantaged them one way or the other. It is true, one person can say, but now we have women also working. But the question is, when you go back home, the responsibility of taking care of the family, the responsibility of nurturing, is that load lifted from their shoulders? That says it is also important that when we are talking about the power relations or power inequalities and trying to include everyone who's been left behind and trying to achieve the issue of social justice, we try to understand whatever challenges that our members within the communities are facing and going through. And this also gives us also a background also on that are being faced by other vulnerable groups or marginalized groups within our communities because they were not included from the classification that was being said. Next slide, please. So I would like us, as I'm also tasked to also be talking about disability, it is important to also understand what really disability is, understanding the challenges that they have because of being left behind in our society. So disability, it is important for us to understand that it is an evolving concept. Every time it changes because the world will sit down and try to understand what really disability is. But according to the United Nations, they gave such a wonderful explanation of what disability is. And so easy, so mathematical, saying disability, if we just hold on to that formula, disability is impairment plus barriers. By impairment, we mean a person can have physical impairment, can have visual impairment. By physical impairment, I think many of us now can understand they may be having some impairment either with any part of the body, being the leg or being on a wheelchair or any part physically. Visual impairment a person can be totally blind or be partially blind or have tunnel vision or different kinds of visual impairment. Other people can have speech impairment or hearing impairment. whereas others would have intellectual impairment. So when these impairments get together with the barriers that the person will be facing, that's when we'll be having disability. By barriers, I can make an example that in our societies, the environments cannot be accessible, saying we are going to the facilities. Try to imagine now if the situation comes and you had to run and go report a case of GBV. The place that you would go to, either being the police, being our chief's place, or if it will be our health facilities. Can you say reaching there is accessible? Can somebody on a wheelchair or using crutches get there and access the service? Can you say somebody who's totally blind or visually impaired can easily navigate to that place and have the opportunity to report? And when they get there, if they have speech or hearing impairment, can they be able to communicate with those people there to report what they have experienced? No, it wouldn't be easy because of lack of accessibility. Next slide, please. So for us, as we try to understand issues of gender and disability mainstreaming, it is important that we adopt the intersectional lens or intersectionality lens. Please go to the next slide, Idade. So intersectionality lens, it is the concept that was being developed by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And this concept explains why some people find themselves more vulnerable in the community. And it shows that when oppressive power structures get together, they create either opportunities of privilege or oppression. And as we can see the wheel, it tried to show several oppressive structures that perhaps a person can be subjected to. And today, as in particular, we are looking into gender and disability. Let's make an example for us to better understand this lens of intersectionality. Let's assume we have this young woman with disability and who lives, let's say, in Mohotlo, in those areas where the roads are not accessible. And let's assume also her family is poor. And this young woman, they experience GBV. And we take another woman living in Maseru. She's also having same disability. And perhaps here in Maseru, her family has better opportunities as compared to that one. And when these two women are experiencing same violence, the one in Maseru is going to have a better chance of reporting because the moment they step out of the house, there's a taxi, there's 4+1, hooting, calling, we are coming to assist you. But on the other hand, that other woman from the rural areas may find it even more difficult, even impossible for them to go report the GBV that they are experiencing. Next slide, please. It is important for us to include disability in our efforts to address GBV. I think for some of us, we're present when the preliminary results of the study that has been made by the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development in collaboration with the Bureau of Statistics and Gender Links was being presented. In as much as the results are not yet out to the general public, but the preliminary results of that study showed that persons with disabilities are highly affected by GBV as compared to their counterparts. And this is the case because for many people with disabilities, the issue of accessibility is key. Most of our services are not inclusive to persons with disabilities. And the other challenge is the issue of
I can speak English.
Yeah. I'm so shocked. I'm like, what? She's speaking in Sesotho.
Colleagues, kindly mute so that we allow Mefifi to smoothly run us over her presentation, please.
Thank you so much, Ndate. And the other challenge is that for many of our people with disabilities, and as is shown also in research, you find that most of the perpetrators are the immediate support systems, either being family members, being neighbors, being people who are expected to be giving them support. And this makes it even difficult for them to report GBV. And when it goes
Excuse
to
me,
the
please,
accessibility
Mefifi,
of
excuse
services,
me. Mefifi, can you use presenter mode, please? Presentation mode, please. Thank
Colleagues, we are
you.
experiencing a technical glitch. Thank you for that. Our IT is working on that. May we kindly sit, and once that challenge is solved, then everyone will be able to see what she's presenting. Thank you.
thank you so much, Ndate. So, looking generally also into persons with disabilities who are more vulnerable to GBV, you'll find that women and girls with disabilities are highly vulnerable to gender-based violence because of their gender and disability. And this calls on to us as stakeholders within the GBV sector to consider the challenges, unique challenges that persons with disabilities face. Next slide, please. So it is important for us, to understand or have an idea of the best way we could better include persons with disabilities. For many people will say, yes, we are very good in mainstreaming gender, in particular mainstreaming women into our programming. And now also looking at the situational analysis that was being made, now persons with disabilities are highly vulnerable. How do we include them? So there's this approach called the twin track approach. For us to better include persons with disabilities in our programming, the first step is to mainstream disability. By mainstreaming disability is we consider including persons with disabilities from the inception. When we design our programs, when we design our program, I want to make an example and try to make it in a way that could be simpler for everyone. Let's say now, here you are, you want to have the program. What about you start thinking, okay, now accessibility of the physical environments. We start making them accessible, having ramps, and then the materials that will be there, we also start considering them. And I'll be going through them in depth, looking at the physical accessibility, informational and communicational as we go forward. And the second step is in the cases that others will say already processes were made, buildings were being established. So now how do I include persons with disabilities into my programming? We provide reasonable accommodation. And reasonable accommodation, we provide that support, saying you provide assistive devices, you can provide specialized support to that particular individual, because now the spaces were not very accessible. I often like to make this example for us to better understand the issue of including persons with disabilities or mainstreaming them. Imagine being invited to a birthday party or celebration, and when you get there, all people are being invited to the dance floor, and you alone, you're not invited. When you are there, would you feel like you were part of that celebration? You wouldn't feel part of, in as much as you were there, but because you did not have the opportunity to participate, to dance as other people were dancing, this limited you, restricted you to have meaningful participation and dance as others were dancing. So when we look into the issues of disability mainstreaming, it is important that we do not just call our persons with disabilities, but we ensure that they are able to participate meaningfully and equally as others. This will say if we achieve it, we have been able to give them full participation as other members in their community. Next slide, please. So as I have highlighted, I will be going in depth on how do we include persons with disabilities. I would like us to start first, as we can see on the screen, issues of physical accessibility. It is important that when we work on accommodating persons with disabilities, we consider our environments. And the environment, it is not only limited to just ramps. It also includes the issue of lighting in those spaces. By lighting, it accommodates persons with other disabilities, saying somebody who has low vision, and if the lighting is enough, they could easily navigate the spaces without finding challenges. And the lighting as well can go together also with the colors sometimes that they are being used. It is important that we be considerate of the challenges that other people may face, like persons with intellectual disabilities or autism. There are some colors that may overwhelm them, while others are more softer and can help them to relax and have meaningful participation. And there's this other important issue of our wash facilities or toilets, also which is very critical as we provide our services as different stakeholders. Are they accessible? Are the doors wide enough for a person on a wheelchair to freely navigate the space? And there are other challenges that other disabilities face also within the wash facilities. So often we use different standards. Everybody will be using whatever they believe it is okay, but there is the universal design that help us to keep almost everything like standard, of which it is important for us, even as civil society organization, to understand why that is important. Normally, let's try to imagine a wash facility or a toilet. For anyone, the first thing that comes is there will be a dustbin, there will be a toilet, there will be toilet paper there. But you find that you go to other facilities, it is different. The question is, for somebody who is visually impaired, those changes, would they be able to navigate them? And if they are unable to navigate them, it makes life even hard. And this goes back to that issue why persons with disabilities sometimes are facing more challenges because of the challenges they face, considering this example of being in a bathroom. Another person, when they see them, they may say, developing that pity or discrimination or unintentionally saying they cannot manage on their own. And that perpetuates the discrimination and the exclusion and the challenges they face. But if we keep everything to the standards, ensuring that there are lightings, if there are emergencies that could be necessary or be made, a person who is deaf can be able to see those lighting and react as others would during that time. Next slide, please. And to also better accommodate our persons with disabilities, communication is key. So often we find most of the communication that we make excluding persons with disabilities. I'd like to appreciate the fact that Mem Alisawan is even with us today for sign language interpretation. As Mesio was also saying, it's so common that people will be forgetting that there are people with disabilities that would also need to be included and participate meaningfully. yes, sign language is very important and needed all the time, and more so because even now it is even included within the 10th Amendment. And we also have other ways that our communication could also be accessible. We can have captioning to ensure that, like now, as we are in this meeting, if captioning was being enabled, it would start making those captions for that person with a hearing impairment could follow whatever messaging was being made. And the other challenge, you'll find that challenge that persons with disability faces is within our digital spaces. You'll find that most of the communication is being made as we market the services that we give to our communities. But you find that we go to those digital spaces, whatever content that is being communicated to the general public, it is not accessible. I want to make an example of consider somebody with intellectual disability, who for him or her, it's easier to understand through pictures or pictorials. And we just post the content just in writing. And also considering that not everybody with disability has had the opportunity to go to school, can be able to read whatever messaging that is there. Can that messaging, if it is not also put in picture, could they be able to understand that? Sometimes we can also be having, some information saying, here we were celebrating this on GBV, but then the information still on the digital spaces, there's no description on photos. The videos, people are just speaking. There's no sign language interpretation there as well. That communication becomes a barrier. And that also takes me to, please go to the next slide, as these ones are also interconnected, that also other communication can be made in forms of audio or braille as it aligns with the information accessibility. That the information that we share all the time, we have to be considerate that persons with disabilities are there. They will need to access that in different formats in their languages, and considering that we do have other languages that have been acknowledged in Lesotho, like isiXhosa, and they would also need to access that information in different formats. Next slide, please. So it is important now to try to look at how do we include disability and gender in everything that we do. So let's start it from the concept phase. As different stakeholders, as organizations, it is important that first we do have technical expertise or support of people with technical expertise in mainstreaming gender. And in particular, as we are also looking at the situation where we are as Lesotho, who understand issues of disability, considering the unique challenges that they face. And this is particularly important because when we are talking about gender, we are talking about all marginalized groups within the community. So as we develop, let's say here is the program, we're writing a proposal, it was also highlighted the issue of fundraising. We have to include reasonable accommodation or disability inclusion from that concept, because it becomes more difficult to come and provide later if it was not included. And from developing that concept, we have to do the situational analysis. We have to go down to the ground and understand the needs of the persons on the ground. Like I have highlighted when I was talking about definition of disability, disability is an evolving concept. And the challenges that persons with disability faces, they differ because disability is not straitjacketed. In particular, the multiple oppressive power structures that individuals face makes them to be even more vulnerable. That is why it is important for us to go and understand the needs of the people from the ground. And I'm sorry about that. Okay, so understanding also on the needs, situational needs and the needs assessment, it is important that, as we have highlighted that issue of intersectionality, it is important we understand the needs of our women, youth, and children, because they'll be speaking from different perspectives because of different identities that they carry as individuals. And in particular, as we have highlighted, children, women, LGBTQI plus community, they're having unique challenges. And when that interacts with disabilities, it even becomes worse. And the other important thing is the issue of budgeting. After design program design. So as we develop the programs that we are going to deliver, it is important also to include disability and include it in budgeting. I want to make an example. Like now, if we are saying we want to include persons with disabilities and we have not accommodated them from the inception, from the design, and even from the needs assessment, you find that you have called beneficiaries and come to deliver your service, and you find that you find a person, let's say, who is deaf, there's no sign language interpreter. And are we saying we are going to continue to do that? I think many of us maybe can relate to the challenge of going out to the community and to the beneficiaries. And when the beneficiaries come, we find those that we are not able to serve them because of we were not prepared, and in our programming, we did not include them, and we find them to be more vulnerable. And this also says when we are designing that program, it also goes to the issue of monitoring and evaluation, that we have to have indicators that are particularly targeting persons with disabilities, that are targeting that different genders, because they're unique, they have unique challenges, and everyone has to be included, as what we are trying to push for is mainstreaming gender, ensuring that every group within the community is being included and capacitated. And it is important that as we also roll up our programs, we learn what it really means relating to issues of disability. So what are new things that perhaps you could do better, considering that disability, it is an evolving concept? And issues of policy. For many of our civil society organizations, most of our work is advocacy. And advocacy, it will also help us considering the processes that we have gone through while we were designing our programs from concept, and what we have received after evaluating the programs that we have evaluated. And we can collectively use those results to try to advocate for inclusion of every member of the society and ensuring that nobody would be left behind. Next slide, please. It is important, to ensure that gender and disability is mainstreamed in all our programming, and to ensure that nobody's left behind, to ensure that we do achieve gender equality and we achieve social justice. And this is more important considering that the issues of gender mainstreaming and disability inclusion, they're not just the concepts that are relevant to us as Lesotho, but globally, as Lesotho, we still have indicators that we have to meet. We have to ensure that our numbers on GBV, they go down. And if our measures or interventions are not targeting all members within the communities, we are going to find ourselves as the country, as different civil society organizations, doing the beautiful work, achieving indicators, but then the numbers still high there because there's part of the community that is being left behind. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Singh, for reminding us that inclusive development requires deliberate efforts to ensure that no one is left behind. And then we are sorry, colleagues, for encountering a technical problem while trying to display the slideshow. Mr. SIHHBDP, thank you for that heartfelt and deeply moving presentation. Your insights and experiences have certainly touched us and given us much to reflect on. One of the key questions she challenged us with was, which gender are we mainstreaming? This prompted us to reflect on the purpose and the meaning of gender mainstreaming, particularly in relation to power relations among different genders. She strongly emphasized disability inclusion, highlighting how persons with disabilities, particularly women, are often left behind due to social norms and perceptions that undervalue women and persons with disabilities. She also highlighted the everyday challenges faced by persons with disabilities, including exploitation, difficulties in reporting GBV, and limited access to services. A key message was the need to ensure that our programs and public infrastructure are genuinely inclusive. For example, physical spaces, pavements, and public facilities should be accessible to persons using wheelchairs, for instance, and other assistive devices. Overall, her presentation recommended us that gender mainstream must be intersectional and must ensure that no one is left behind. Thank you, back to you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Shinda Dematu. And once again, Fifi, thank you for that succinct presentation. For me personally, I noted that mathematical expression because I'm not that good in maths, but that one I think I've comprehended it very well, that disability is the sum, and the two numbers that make that sum is impairment and social barriers. So we can address impairments and then the barriers, then the disability issue would be a history or would be something that we would be able to navigate. Thanks for that comprehensive presentation. Last lap, but not least, we say in Sesotho that so we are having Mema Murao as the last speaker, because Mary Figure has given us once again a sumptuous delivery, as Tanya has already set the stage very well. So Mema Murao would be giving us a presentation. Mema Murao is our public health practitioner and social behavior change specialist with a quite healthy experience in health promotion, advocacy, communication, and social mobilization. She has also worked extensively across the likes of UNFPA and other development partners, supporting programs that strengthen community engagement, health communication, positive behavior change across diverse populations. Currently, Mema Murao, she is with a sustainable irrigated horticulture, health and business development project as a SBC specialist. So Mema Murao, please proceed and then unmute yourself and give us your presentation. Thank you very much, and over to you. Thank you. Yes, the presentation is clear from our end. If you may proceed to the mic icon and then unmute yourself and then give us the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dati. Am I audible? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Greetings have been passed and welcome remarks from the high level. So I'd like to align myself with those. I know I'm the last person, like Ndati said, like my name. Thank you very much for participating. I saw a list of people that I know. Some are international, some are local, and I appreciate you responded to the invitation. You have sat through discussions on policies, mainstreaming, coordination, and inclusion. But I'm here to talk about the elephant in the room. Changing minds, changing lives, SBC solution for GBV, for GBV prevention. So I'll be brief, but I'll be direct. SBC, in this case, uses participatory evidence-based methods to shift norms and systems driving GBV, fostering safety, respect, and quality. I look around this platform where you are, and I see the people who have built the shelters, drafted the policies, trained the service providers, like, for instance, police officers and judges. You have worked hard. You've built a fortress of protection for survivors. And yet, the violence still continues. It continues in the villages, in the cities, towns, and even in the homes of the people who write policies, right? Today, I'm here to tell you to work hard. I'm not here to tell you not to work hard, sorry. You're already exhausted, I know. I'm here to tell you that we've been building the outside of the house, but we forgot to fix the plumbing inside. SBC missing key is that we have built the walls, but we haven't changed the minds that lives inside them. Let me give you a medical analogy. Imagine you are a doctor, you have the best hospitals, you have the best medicine, you have the best surgeons, but your patient has a heart condition. You give them the medication, you tell them to stop eating junk food, you tell them to exercise, but they leave your hospital, they go home, eat junk food, don't take the medication, then they have a heart attack and come back to ER. Do we blame the hospital? No. We blame the patient's behavior. This is the reality of gender-based violence. We have the medication, the Counter Domestic Violence Act, the safe shelters, the gender desks at the police stations, but the perpetrators, and some are even the victims, are not taking the medicine. Why? Because the man doesn't believe he's doing anything wrong. He calls it's a discipline. The woman doesn't believe she deserves better. She calls it my burden. The community doesn't believe it's their problem. They call it's a private matter. We are running the best emergency rooms in the world, but the patient keep going home eating the poison. We are treating the symptoms, not the disease. Let's look at something we all know, smoking. For decades, governments put warning labels on cigarettes. They banned advertising. They passed laws. Did smoking stop immediately? No, didn't. We stopped smoking. What stopped smoking? What stopped smoking? It wasn't just the law, it was just change of culture. Society started smoking isn't tough. Smoking is gross. Smoking makes you smell bad. Smoking kills your kids with secondhand smoke. We made smoking socially unacceptable. We did that. We made the behavior embarrassing. Here's the GBV connection. We have laws against domestic violence, like I said earlier. We have laws against harassment, but a man hits his wife in the privacy of his home, and the law doesn't see it. The SBC question is, have we made wife beating socially unacceptable? Many communities, it's still seen as discipline and a private matter. Until we make violence and socially repulsive as smoking in a public place, the laws will only catch 1% of the perpetrators. The other 99% will keep going and doing it because their friends, their uncles, and their pastors still nod their needs in silence. The law says, don't do it, but the community whispers, it's okay. And the whisper is louder than the law. Let's talk about shelters that we've built. We've built beautiful, safe houses. They have security, food, and counseling. It's the best gym in town. They have. But why are they often underutilized? Why do women keep going back to their business? The SBC's answer is It's because the journey to the shelter is terrifying. For a woman to go to a shelter, she must admit she's a failure as a wife, risk her children being taken away, face community gossip, she couldn't keep her husband, face abusers' threats, I'll kill you if you leave. The SABC fixes that. We need to change the social perceptions of the shelter. Instead of the shelter being seen as the last resort for broken women, we need to make it a symbol of bravery. We need community leaders, religious leaders, chiefs, and even male elders to publicly say, if my daughter or my sister goes to that shelter, I'll be proud of her. She is strong. If the community shames the abuser instead of the survivor, the shelter becomes a place of hope, not a place of shame. We build the building. Now we must build the courage to enter it. We talk a lot about gender mainstreaming. We train officers. We add gender focal points. We include women in meetings. This is like a GPS. You are telling the car to turn left to avoid traffic. But the GPS map is outdated. You end up driving into a river or a dam. The SBC reality is that we have mainstreamed gender into the administration, but we haven't mainstreamed it into the hearts. For instance, even when, or even with gender desk, survivors are still sometimes met with questions about their clothing or credibility, which can deter reporting and we can trust. The map said, gender desk, the behavior of the service provider was victim blaming. How can SBC fix this? We must change the behavior of the gatekeepers. We don't just train them on the law, we train them on empathy. We use role play. We let them experience for 5 minutes what it feels like to be blamed for something that wasn't their fault. We need to update the GPS so that the behavior matches the policy. Mainstreaming about structures, SBC is about souls. Here is another model reality. Think about smartphone. It has the most powerful processor, the best camera, 5 gig network. It's perfect machine. iPhone, so they say, it is like that. But if the battery is at 1%, it's just a paperweight. Our policies, institutions are the phone. They are powerful. The shelters are the apps. The police are the network. But the battery, the behavior of people is very empty. Why is the battery empty? Men are stressed because of employment, for example, poverty, and pressure to provide. Women are silent because fear, shame, and economic independence. Communities are pathetic because mind your own business. SB is the charger. We don't throw away the phone, we just plug it in. We teach men how to cope with stress without violence. We teach women how to speak up. We teach communities how to support. We recharge the human spirit so the system we build can actually work. Now let's talk about the how part of it. We live in the digital age. Most people, especially young people, spend hours scrolling on TikTok, Instagram, and WhatsApp. If you're still printing posters, handing over brochures, you're shouting into the wind. SBC in 2026 means meeting people where they are. I'll give you a few examples. The respect challenge. We create short 30 seconds reels showing toxic argument versus healthy argument. It goes viral. Boys see it and think, that angry guy looks ridiculous. The calm guy looks cool. Another one, maybe, WhatsApp group. We create community WhatsApp groups where we share daily parenting hacks, not lectures, but practical tips, how to calm your child without hitting them. Maybe the last one I'll say, can call it "Are You Okay" campaign. Use influencers, local musicians, footballers, players to record a simple message. If you see abuse, say something. We make protecting women trendy, not legal. Let's connect this to creating space for all, disability and inclusion. Often when we talk about disability and GBV, we think about access. Like the previous presenter mentioned that. We think we can get into the shelter, or can she get into the shelter, or can she reach the police station? That's important, but SBC goes deeper. The real barrier attitude. Many people, even when meeting once, look at a woman with a disability and think, she's weak, she's helpless. No one will hurt her. She's like a child. But the reality is that this belief makes her invisible. And when she is invisible, she's 3 to 4 times more likely to be abused, because the abuser knows no one is watching. The SBC solution, we must change the way we see her. We don't just build a ramp, we put her on campaign posters, we invite her to speak at our events, we train our service providers to speak to her with dignity. We change the behavior from pity to partnership. We see her as a leader, the abuser sees her as a threat, and then he stops. Now we have identified the gaps. We know the policy and the shelter are not enough because behavior doesn't change. So what is the innovative way to do it? I would like to propose few interventions. This one, I'll call it the village match. It is community-led, technology-enabled early warning system, that bridges the gap between the law and the living room. How does it work? I'll call it the community monitors. We recruit trusted community members, not police officers, but neighbors, shopkeepers, religious leaders, and even youth. We can train them to recognize the early signs of violence, increased shouting, visible bruises, the woman becoming withdrawn, the man drinking heavily. The other one will be the voice, secure reporting system. Instead of waiting for the woman to report, which is often too scared to do, the neighbor uses a simple secure platform, like a dedicated WhatsApp number or encrypted SMS line to send anonymous alerts. Step 3, or another example, will be action, the rapid response team. The alert goes to a designated rapid response team in the community. The team, it's not again the police yet. It's a trained group of social workers, paralegals, and trusted elders. They arrive at the house within 30 minutes. What do? They don't arrest, they de-escalate. They separate the couple. The male counselor talks to the man about the stress, his triggers, and offer anger management support. The female counselor talks to the woman, offering her a safe phone number and a discreet escape plan. They leave behind a safety card with a code word she can text if anything escalates again. Why is this innovative? It's proactive, not reactive. Stop the fire before it burns the house down. It uses technology that is already in hands. WhatsApp, SMS are accessible to almost everyone. It removes the fear the woman doesn't have to make the call. The neighbor does it for her. It addresses the root causes. The man gets help, not just a jail sentence. We treat the disease, not the system, the symptoms, sorry. The gap, it bridges. Legal gap prevents cases from reaching the overburdened already legal systems. The shelter gap, it reduces the need of emergency shelter by intervening early. The behavior gap, it changes the community behavior from bystanders to protect us. It makes violence everyone's business. So this is SBC in action. This is changing minds before lives are destroyed. We have talked about changing others, but let's be honest. Before the community, we must change ourselves. I want you to look in the mirror. You can use a phone for a second. When you are in a meeting and a male colleague makes a joke about a woman, do you laugh? Or do you say, that's not funny? Another question. When you see your friend or brother treating his wife badly, do you say something? Or do you say, oh, it's their business? Question 3. When you design a program, do you involve men? Or do you just label them as perpetrators and move on? If we don't change our behavior, how can we ask others to change theirs? SBC is not a project. It's a daily practice of courage. Let me leave you with this. We are all here because we want to end violence. We are not enemies, we are allies. We've been fighting a war with the wrong weapons. We've been using punishment and laws to fight a problem that is rooted in beliefs and habits. A law can put a man in jail, trust me, but only a changed heart can stop him from hitting in the first place. So ask you 3 questions only. Listen to your heart. What is it telling you about your own bias? Listen to your community. What are they really saying about violence? Not that you want them to say, but what they actually say. Act with courage. Speak up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Remember, we cannot arrest our way out of this. We cannot shelter our way out of this. We cannot legislate our way out of this. We must talk our way out of this. One conversation at a time. We must move from being responders to being preventers. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your heart.
Thank you very much. You know, we always save the best for the last. Colleagues, please join me in using the emoji icon just to give a round of applause to our 3 presenters. Please use the emojis as to applaud and acknowledge 3 of our presenters.
And
please don't, it's not unmuting, it's going. Mayor, there's a background there, you have unmuted. Okay, colleagues, thank you. We have run over the time that we promised that we would be done by 1200 hours, but due to technical glitches, we started a bit 15 to 20 minutes late. I think it was around 10:15 when we started. So my sincere apologies, as I would request that we extend our engagement up to 12:30, and then I can safely promise you that at 12:30 we would terminate. We are going to enter the Q&A session, but just a quick round of what Mema Morao has talked about. Really an impactful presentation, but position SBC as a program approach into policy and laws that we have been heavily leaning on them. Therefore, she is providing us a window as to why GBV is still continuing despite a comprehensive, although limited legislative architecture or tapestry that we have, and the policy as well. So thanks, Ravi, for that. I think she has made noteworthy presentation on how are we fixing not the hospital, but the patient. Now, our focus should perhaps, I think she was calling that, we should now be focusing on the perpetrator, not in a blame format, but in a format that how can we empower the perpetrator to be in a space where he or she knows that what is GBV, how does it look like? She has also, I think, touched on or requested us to rethink how we engage men as allies, and then how do we redefine masculinity as well in terms of giving us those principles that are livable as opposed to those harmful masculinities. She has also requested us just to have a transition from a charity model of viewing disability to other inclusive, transformative models like social and human rights model, where she requested us to move from PT to partnership with those people living with disability. I think generally that's what Member Murao has touched on. We would remember that we started off with Tanya Wells-Brown. She was giving us a bigger picture of GBV coordination in Lesotho, zooming into the health sector. So we went on to Mel Fifi, where she was presenting on disability and gender mainstreaming, where she touched on issues of disability as an evolving and as such requiring us as practitioners, policymakers, to evolve our interventions and our support as well. And then we have lastly engaged Member Murao. So colleagues, that's time where you can go to the icon where you would raise your hand and then be straight to the point, as we are having round about 10 to 15 minutes of question and answer. Please go ahead and then would be taking hands as of when they are raised, just to make your points, inputs, question, clarifications. So this is a space where we can engage all of us, what our presenters have served us. Thank you. Please go ahead to the raise hand button, and then we would give you space to put across your questions, your answers. I know that they have shared their presentation in much clarity, but perhaps everything is clear. I'm just looking from my end, and Adematu as well, who would take hands as of when they are raised. But while you are trying to shape your thoughts, I would just invite Tanya as our first speaker, perhaps, to. She has talked about physical violence and sexual violence, and the disparity of our system in terms of reacting decisively to sexual violence over physical disability. Perhaps, Tanya, you may, in a minute or 2 minutes, perhaps expand as to your findings. How did you find our reason, perhaps inadvertently so, why we are responding cautiously and strongly to sexual violence over physical disability? Tanya, over to you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in at the end here. Before I answer the direct question, I just want to congratulate my esteemed colleagues who I thought brought along extremely complementary elements to the discussion this morning. I think the different elements that we spoke about in terms of social and behavior change and the importance of disability inclusion across that broader multi-sectoral coordination is something that we really need to consider. And I think it was really important. And I congratulate you all on bringing together such a sort of dynamic panel so that we can really consider those broader things as well. In terms of the my findings, I think what it speaks to is that the role that training had to play in how health workers were able to identify and appropriately respond to sexual violence through that really strong element of changing and particularly well designed protocols that were brought together with a group of people who really work together. And if you see the guidelines that are in use, you'll see the collaboration and the different sectors that were involved. I think what's really interesting is that some of the people who should be aware of these guidelines, when I showed them the guidelines on sexual violence, a lot of people hadn't seen them. So that speaks volumes to the way that it's become quite embedded in the health sector, but more broadly, there's a lot more work that needs to happen in terms of bringing on board people to sit around a table so that we can demonstrate what guidelines are being used where. I think in terms of the physical violence, my colleagues have mentioned this extremely well, and in terms of the importance of behaviour change, physical violence is extremely normalised. And the sort of bystander role that people take in communities, that it's not my role to get involved, it's not my role to say anything, this needs to be resolved at the family level, this needs to be resolved within couples, within families, extends into the role of the health worker as well. So there's a different set of responsibilities that are involved in responding to a sexual violence protocol because of the risk of STIs, because of the potential for pregnancy, because of the potential to have to do a termination of pregnancy. So because of those elements that are more ingrained in that protocol, if you like, health workers take on board that role and responsibility a lot more than somebody who has experienced a physical violence. And if we extend that to potentially somebody who has a physical disability as well, and the risks and vulnerabilities for people with disabilities, we know that people who have disabilities are far more vulnerable to violence from within the family or domestic abuse as well. But because it's normalized, because they don't have the confidence to ask the questions, because of the additional paperwork that's involved, and because their health workers are also members of the community as well, they have to go back to the community that they are supporting. So the risks for them exposing potential domestic violence or physical violence is a very real thing for them as well. So because those structures are not in place, because it's less clear and it's more of a murky ground, they will tend to treat the injury itself as a physical injury and not do the probing or the reporting required for physical violence, because of these broader things that they have to deal with. So I think there does need to be more defined protocols for health workers more broadly, so that they are better equipped to respond to these very prevalent physical injuries that are happening to women, and children, and also young boys as well. So I think it's really important to, as my colleague spoke about, that gender element and the vulnerabilities go across the board, although we do know that women and girls are more globally more at risk of violence than men and boys. I hope that answers the question. But I would be really happy to elaborate on that. And I was just looking in the chat as well. I know that you would like to end at 11:30. I really agree with the comment that it's the real crux is changing the behaviours that go along with any of these sort of violence prevention or the introductions of protocols. And I thoroughly agree with the fact that we have these protocols in place, and they may well be, communities may be informed about them, but the levels that they can actually assimilate that, their feelings towards it, how pragmatic it is, how acceptable it is to them, is a level that we don't probe enough about. There's very little funding about that. So we talk about dissemination of protocols. What we don't talk about is how we actually then transform that into something that will be embedded in a behavior that can be adopted by communities from a legislation adoption, or even from a prevention responses as well. I see we've got a hand up from somebody on the panel, so I'm going to pause here. Thank you.
Yes. No, thanks, Tanya, for addressing that comprehensively. Yes, I see the hand of Mr. Kholwane. Please go ahead, Mr. Kholwane. Thank you.
Chair. Yes, mine, I think it's an observation from the approach which we took in terms of maybe dissecting this issue of GBV. Each culture is uniquely different, and it has its own systems. So in terms of the targeted audience, I will have seen where Tanya will have maybe engaged the people, or maybe the institution that she will have had. It's just a fact that being a Mosotho boy or a man, to what extent do we integrate the well-established systems within our cultures, which are good? They need to be built on and then be carried forward. Maybe afraid that in our literature review, we fail to really dig deep in terms of maybe what very systems, norms we can leverage from the communities or the elderly people who do not put most of these issues on paper. But it's, I think, a situation whereby we are a culture whereby these systems, they are handed down through verbal dialogue without actually putting them on paper. Because I think I can confidently say my wife is who she is because of maybe the thorough induction by my mother-in-law. And well, being a modern person, she still upholds those value systems, which makes her a good mother, or a good wife, if I may say. So in terms of trying to dispel the issues of GBV, how do you integrate those issues? Because as a man, you're told not to beat a wife. I know this from the teachings from my father, but it's not coming here. Thank you on that.
Thank you very much. I think Tanya, you would respond to that, but first let me take Mayor Bongiwe Busi. Mayor Bongiwe, please proceed, and then let's hear your views. Thank you. Mayor Busi, there you are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for the presentation. I'd just like to commend the presentations that have been made by all the presenters. They were all quite significant. And as it has come to our realization that GBV is really becoming a pandemic in our country, and it affects all women, particularly women with disabilities who suffer systemic barriers in accessing justice. So one comment I would like to throw to the floor is that Mary Fue's presentation was mainly based on the barriers that persons with disabilities encounter when they try to access justice, especially reporting mechanisms when they try to report cases. Accessibility becomes a problem, and would like to encourage each and everyone, every service provider, just to highlight the crucial issue that, for instance, if there is a deaf woman who's been who encountered GBV and tries to go and report the case at the police station, they encounter a number of barriers, communication barriers in all police centers or police stations. And as it has been highlighted that even physical accessibility and for people with intellectual disability also have to access information in very accessible formats that were stipulated. I would like to encourage all stakeholders to take note of that. That was just a comment from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucy. And I know that our Minister of Police is in here, and Mayor Fifi and Mayor Marisawana would attest to that they are doing tremendous work in terms of accessibility within our police stations. Currently, I know for sure that we do have police officers who are now disability inclusive in terms of language and other means. So I think we are making the baby steps, but we do call on more investment on that one. Tanya, perhaps you might want to touch what Dadela Holane has said. I think it speaks to the issue of redefining masculinity in all its aspects. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm happy to take that question. I think what we're trying to do here, and I think with the steps that we're taking today, is to bring together a body of information and actually put it in a sort of collective portal, so so what I urge you to do today is, take down the transcript of this meeting, take down the comments that you've received, and start collecting a body of evidence as you walk along this journey of strengthening the prevention and response to gender-based violence. So to directly answer the question, listening to and consulting the voice of elders and elderly members of the community is a really important piece of this network of information that we need to know and understand. So we had in the presentation that sort of historical lens of gender equality, probing down further and actually getting the opinions of older members of the community about how this has lived out and what norms they have passed on to their children, and whether they see any sort of shifts or changes in why violence has become more systemized or more normalized within Lesotho, is a really uncaptured market, an uncaptured research area. So I think it's a very important point. It's not the area that I researched at all. I'm looking at things from a system perspective, but I think piecing together all of this data and this information will really help you formalize a better response. One of the things that I did find in my research, though, was, and I don't think this comes across because of the way that we capture data, and particularly the way that we capture data in the sort of reproductive age barrier, is the amount of violence that actually does happen to elderly people, to the physical and sexual violence that happens to elderly people. A lot of health workers spoke about that. A lot of health workers spoke about not necessarily applying the protocol in the right way in those cases because they knew an elderly woman couldn't get pregnant, for example. So I think it's an area that we haven't explored enough. There's definitely a gap here. And you know, I urge you young researchers in Lesotho, anthropologists, social and behavior change experts, to really try and tap into that area. It's a very neglected area of the jigsaw puzzle that we're trying to put together. So I really want to urge emphasize as well, when I was doing my document review, to try and pick up minutes of meetings that have happened historically. They're just not there. So we need to formulate a memory bank of these processes now.
Thanks, Tanya. I think colleagues, last question from, I think it's in Date Zandile or Mbe Zandile, apologies, Zandile Sakwane. It's to either Mefifi or Mema Morao to say, if you were to identify one practical action that the government or our civil society and communities should jointly prioritize over the next 12 months, which is a year, to make GBV prevention more effective and inclusive, what would it be and why? In the next 12 months, you are given a clean slate just to write one priority for us to address GBV and disability inclusion comprehensively. What would that be and why? I think Mef, if you can jump in, or Mema Morao, we can jump in, and that would be our last round, and then we proceed to closure. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Ndete.
Yes.
Thank you so much. For me, one thing is budget allocation. Budget allocation for different genders. Let's say, since now we are having different ministries, different civil society organizations that are pushing different agendas, the organizations that are pushing male empowerment, women empowerment, youth empowerment, or children's inclusion and empowerment or protection. But generally, in all those different sectors or fields where they are working, if they could have allocated budget in particular for disability, I'm saying that because disability is cut crossing in all thematic areas. So that is why I will say allocating a particular budget for inclusion, for reasonable accommodation would help us to change wherever that we are. And the beauty of reasonable accommodation is that even though one may see as though it's targeted towards persons with disabilities, it benefits even others without disability. I want to make a small example. Say now, reasonable accommodation that was budgeted for was to make information more accessible, saying we also targeted audio or even large print in the messaging that we say to try to address the issues of GBV. It says that even if when you are in your car or you are busy working in your house, you could also listen to the audio messages. And large print, it says that, you know, as people age and with this other chronic diseases that come and several accidents that happen, a person at one point cannot be able to even see clearly. So for me, it's budget allocation and particularly targeting inclusion of persons with disabilities, because it is the one for the longest time that has been left behind. And if it was allocated in every ministry, in every civil society organization, it can say the indicators of us reducing the level of GBV in Lesotho could improve. Thank you, Ndete.
Thanks, Mayor Fifi. I don't know, Mema Morao, if you want to put up something to that. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Tati. I can just mention a few. Remember in my presentation, I talked about the innovative ways to do things. However, I'd like to agree with Mary Filwe. The budget allocation is very important. Another thing which is very important is that we're not talking about social behavior change. It's very, very minimal in the country. Many people don't understand what social behavior change is all about. But social behavior change goes down, deep down to the community too, the households, individuals. It's then to society and, you know, it expands everywhere. to bring change and to bring change mindset of people change. That's the main thing. And we don't even have enough budget for that. So if we could just advocate for behavior change interventions, then we'll make it. And if we don't do it in the offices, we go down to the communities and work with civil societies. And also keep on training young people on behavior change. That would be my 2 cents. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mema Morao. This is the last hand. I see the end of Ntate Lohodi Mutikwe. Please go ahead, Ntate, and you are the last one. Just put the closure behind you. Thank you.
But it's the problem.
I think you are being interrupted by your line of network. I think it's not.
Is that good?
Yeah, go ahead. Now. Yeah, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Saying that a technical problem.
I think I was giving him chance, but colleagues, I think I have failed. Apologies in that, but please use the chat while we are doing the wrap up. Colleagues, I think this is the terminal of or the termination point of our engagement today. So I will invite Mayor Director GSI just to give us our closing remarks. And then we will sign off. Thank you. Mayor Mamunagin, please proceed to unmute and then give us your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramakwele, esteemed colleagues. Our principals, the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development, they have reminded us of the goal to which we all strive: promoting, protecting, respecting the intrinsic human dignity of the people whom we serve. We must always circle back to this goal because the lives we touch carry a lot of meaning and all our interventions are essential. Whether it is improving our coordination structure, joint referral pathways, our data systems, our public budgeting, our financial planning, whether it is through ensuring that our programs mainstream disability, they provide reasonable accommodation, or the critical nature of social behavior change and primary prevention approaches that we must integrate in our project. I think our presenters have done a stellar job. We thank them for that. We also thank our facilitators. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and let's meet again for other conversations on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Monaghan. A round of applause for Mayor Monaghan for that brief closing remarks. Colleagues, I have one request before we depart. May we open our cameras so that we take a group photo, a virtual group photo, just to sign our presence here, that the 42 minutes that we have exceeded on can be evidence to that. So kindly open your cameras. There after the group photo, then all will be done, and we really thank you. And from my co-facilitator here as well, I really thank you, Ndati. He's the one that groomed me when I arrived at the Department of Gender. So if I did badly today, no, it's all Ndati. I think there are some few of us that have not opened their cameras, maybe because of this weather, Tanya, here. It's blazing cold. People are still in their gowns. So we would appreciate that if they don't open. It's not a must. So colleagues, I think Mema Tselane, you would signal to me once you are happy with how the group photo would look like. think we can put our best looks on the photo so that because it will go a long way in our reports. I think Mematzelane, it's sufficient. So we are done, I think. I want to believe that we have taken it. So thanks very much, colleagues, for your time. Food, we have talked about food, but when Mema Munahing asked me about food, I pointed here to Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, that we cannot live on food only. So food will be served from our trusted lunch boxes for today. So we thank you for your participation. Till we meet again, colleagues. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.